Good morning. As we think about the new normal, I want to talk about how we've been questioning our priorities in life. This series is all about, and what are the practices we could put into place which might make life better for us, particularly in terms of building our relationship with God. What might that look like? And particularly I want to talk to you about one of those practices this morning. Now, Lynn and I are currently in Kent. We're walking as part of our holiday from Rochester to Ramsgate. I know it takes all sorts, right? And if things have gone well, we're currently in Canterbury, and yet I'm preaching today. Slightly odd. Double irony. I want to talk to you about Sabbath and rest. I want to see this morning, just briefly, what our culture has to say about Sabbath and what it's looked like for us maybe in the past. I want to see what the Bible says, and I want to see how certainly I have tried to work those things out. Now, my Sabbath will be different from yours, but hopefully this will get us thinking about what Sabbath might look like. Chances are we grew up with one of two experiences in terms of Sabbath. For some of us, it was a very legalistic and perhaps restrictive day. You did nothing on a Sunday. Maybe you went to church, maybe you went more than once, but maybe it was more about what you didn't do. You didn't maybe watch TV, although for some reason the big match was always allowed in my house. This despite the fact I didn't grow up in a religious household. You weren't allowed to play because Sunday was separate and different and special. You could go out for a walk, but I remember one old lady in my previous church saying we were allowed out for a walk, but we weren't allowed to have an ice cream while we were on that walk. The second experience of growing up in regards to Sabbath is it may have made no difference to you whatsoever. It might be that it was just another day of the week. As far as you were concerned, every day was like Sunday. Your parents may have worked on a Sunday, you may have worked on a Sunday. It might be the day that you do the family shop, or a day where you simply get up a bit later, get dressed later than normal, but otherwise it's pretty much a day as normal. Of course, there'll be all sorts of grades in between as well. But I think that both of these examples miss the main point. You are missing out if you take either of these paths. So what is Sabbath? This is a Hebrew word that the Bible uses. Sabbath, it simply means rest or to stop. It can also be translated to delight. So Sabbath is a chance to stop, rest and delight. Sounds all right, doesn't it? We see in Genesis chapter 2 verses 2 to 3 that when God finished his work of creation on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. God, who surely didn't need to rest, I doubt that he was tired, sets an example for us in resting after 6 days' work, and in doing so gives our week a pattern. 6 days you work, 1 day you rest, and that's a good pattern. Contrast how it might look today for many of us. It turns out to be something very, very different. You talk to somebody and say, how are you? And very often the answer that we give or that comes back to us is, oh, tired, or oh, so busy right now. A lot of us would say that, and for some people it's almost a badge of honour. Look how important I am, look how busy I am, no wonder I'm tired. That's the trouble with being indispensable. Work leaks into leisure time, and leisure time leaks into work time. So we might find ourselves looking at stuff on YouTube or on Facebook during working hours, and then trying to catch up with some of the emailing that we haven't done later in the evening. We've lost that Sabbath pattern, and spiritually that's really dangerous. Corrie ten Boom once said that if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. And there's truth in that. Both sin and busyness have exactly the same effect. They cut off your connection to God, to other people, and even to your own soul. In a similar vein, John Ortberg writes, for many of us, the great danger is not that we will renounce our faith, it is that we will become so distracted and rushed and preoccupied that will settle for a mediocre version of it. As an alternative to that, the Bible gives us this pattern: 6 days work, 1 day Sabbath, a 24-hour rest from all work. And it's so important that God actually commands it, one of the 10 commandments. In Exodus chapter 20, we're reminded from verse 8 to verse 10, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labour and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall do no work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. So here we're told to follow God's example. Every 7 days have a day of rest. Not only that, but it's a day off even for your servants, for foreigners, even your animals. Imagine what good news that was to the people who had been rescued from slavery in Egypt. Moses leads them out and then relays the news that God has given. You've no need to work like slaves anymore every day of the week. You get a day off work each week. Must have been incredible news for them, wasn't it? What a fantastic piece of news. And I want to suggest to you, it is just as fantastic to us to be told this as well. God gives us the same gift and says, here you go, take a day off from work every week. You don't have to keep slogging away 7 days a week. Change gear, do something completely different for once. Instead, every week, you get a day where you can do that. Similarly great news. It's like commanding, says John Mark Comer. Ice cream or live music or beach days. You'd think we'd all be chomping at the bit to practice the Sabbath. But apparently there's something about the human condition that makes us want to hurry our way through life as fast as we possibly can, to rebel against the limitations of time itself. Due to our immaturity, dysfunction and addiction, God has to command his people to do something deeply life-giving: rest. That's from a terrific book by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's a fantastic book, probably of the 50 or so that I've read. It's a Sabbath thing for me, okay? I'd say it's right up there as possibly being the best thing that I've read this year. So helpful. Jesus reminds us that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. That aligns for us, doesn't it? That the day of rest is for our benefit. The Sabbath isn't designed to tie us up in rules and regulations of what we can and cannot do. Sabbath is this fantastic gift to us. A day where we don't work because we're not robots and we can't keep going day after day after day. Sometimes you come across reports of people who say, I haven't had a day off for 20 years. Those people are fools. They have missed 1,000 days where they could have just kicked back and done something else, resting, enjoying something else. What does Sabbath look like? I want to play a little game with you. Can you complete the sentence? And I think most of us can. A Marza day helps you work, rest and play. Now if you knew that, and some of the younger people may not have known it, then that dates you, because they haven't used that for 25 years. But from 1959 to 1995, that is the line. A Mars a day helps you work, rest and play. And I want to counter that with a slogan of my own. A Sabbath a week makes life less bleak. It's catchy, isn't it? I might need a bit of work on that. A Sabbath a week where we can work, rest, play and also worship. Exodus 20 verse 10 points out that it's a Sabbath to the Lord. It's a reminder that we rely on God. So spending time with him and worshipping him is an important component of our Sabbath practice. And it'll look different for each of us because we have different ideas of rest. David Field writes about this and explains. God wants us to be healthy, balanced people. If our major weekday work involves a great deal of physical exertion, we will naturally need to find Sabbath occupations which ease aching muscles and stimulate the mind. But if we spend our working days sitting at a desk, then playing sport or digging the garden may be just the right sort of Sabbath activity for us. So the key question here is, what is going to give me that sense of being replenished, of Sabbath rest? What can I delight in? What does it feel like play for us to do? And for different of us, that will be different things. We will Sabbath differently, you and I. What is restful for me may not be restful for you, and vice versa. And Sabbath refreshes us so that we can work again with renewed strength, and it helps work in perspective as well. It helps keep work in perspective. Suddenly it's not the be-all and end-all. If you take a regular Sabbath day off where you don't work, it reminds us that nobody died and left me in charge. Taking time off each week reminds us that God is in charge. It's a weekly practical exercise in trusting Him. That weekly break helps us to get a better, proper perspective on our lives. And it reminds us too that there's more to life than work. We're reminded that it's good to work, but it's not good for work to take over. Lots of us may take work home, or even if we've got it really badly, on holiday with us as well. Sabbath is a weekly practice that helps us keep work in its place. And a word about holidays at this time of year as well. I remember at a previous church, my first summer holiday, and the church secretary said, how can we contact you? And I simply said, you can't, I'm on holiday. He said, yeah, but what if the church burns down? Because I'm known to be a very good firefighter. I said, well, I'll see it when I get home, because I'm not going to be any use in that situation either. It might seem petty and unhelpful, but actually I think it's a really good biblical thing to do. When you're resting, you rest. You might also do a different day's Sabbath to the one that people around you do. Maybe it's your work patterns. I can identify with this, and so it's harder to have that regular rhythm. But I also know how it feels if I don't have that rhythm. So find out what works for you. Don't be shoehorned into somebody else's pattern. It's what works for you in order for you to rest. Now, having said that, the advice that I've read, which I think is wise, is try really hard to have a consistent Sabbath day rather than hop around on different days, because that helps us with creating a meaningful and balanced rhythm of work and rest in your weeks. So if this week my Sabbath is Saturday and next week it's Monday, that creates an imbalance, doesn't it? Because I've got 2 days in very close succession and big stretches either side where I don't. And of course, a true Sabbath, whichever day you celebrate it, won't simply be a chance to recharge the batteries, but to top up spiritually as well. Time spent with God's people, worshipping Him and considering His word, as we are this morning, are really important in helping us to maintain balance in our lives and perspective on the things that we're doing in madly busy lives very often. And on that note, I think if you're serious about practicing Sabbath and you Sabbath on a Sunday, you need to write in your diary every week, Sunday morning church. Because Sabbath is in part about time with God. So when we meet with our church family and we worship together and hear His word explained to us together, that's got to be a priority. Not just something that gets pushed out because something else comes along. And I know that can be hard because there are so many things going on. There are parties, there's sport, there's seeing relatives, all sorts of things. But when your kids are young, especially, that can be really difficult. Now, I know things have changed even since I was a parent of small children, but when we were dealing with this as a family, birthday parties and sports fixtures were very often on a Sunday. And so we had a family rule. You could do those things, you could go to those things, you could play that game of football for your under 13s or whatever it was, but you had to be in church as well. So if there was a game on in the morning, that meant going to the evening youth group that night. If it meant there was a party in the afternoon, we made sure that church beforehand was a priority, even if we couldn't hang around for ages to talk afterwards and then had to ferry somebody off to a party. And we did that because we wanted church to have first priority. We wanted God to have first priority. And just as a family, that worked for us pretty well. Now you might think, well, that's a bit legalistic. I think about it much more in terms of guarding something that's precious. One of the great things that the marriage course encourages couples to do in the very first week is to go on a date every week with each other. And it doesn't have to be fancy or expensive, just set a time and a place and spend that time together. And so we've for many years tried to prioritise that in our diaries. We kind of write it down, we book it in. Now again, is that legalistic? Again, I'd say we are trying to do this even though it may not reek of spontaneity. But we know that if we don't book it in, there's a good chance it won't happen. So I look at that as liberating. I'm marking out that time in my diary and say, this is what gets priority that evening, or that morning, or that lunchtime, or whatever it might be. It means that I don't miss out on that time together. It's been harder during lockdown, I'll confess that. Something we need to start working out even harder. In the same way, if I don't plan to set aside each week time to Sabbath, then there's a very good chance I won't really Sabbath at all. I'll miss out on that time. Pete Scazzero recommends that we actually have to prepare for Sabbath. We need to give it some thought. And this is something that he writes. He says, rearranging how you do life the other 6 days of the week so you can actually stop and enjoy a full 24-hour Sabbath. Identify the unpaid work you usually attend to on your day off and make time to do it during the week. If you fail to prepare, you will no doubt end up doing unpaid work during your Sabbath. On the day your Sabbath begins, or the night before, begin your transition to Sabbath 3 or 4 hours before. Use your transition time to take care of any last-minute tasks, for example, grocery shopping, paying bills, mowing the lawn, or making a final phone call to set up something work-related for next week. Does that sound too fanciful? Does that sound too difficult, too idealistic? We've found that it takes some readjusting, but we're glad when we do it because it's worth it. And truth to be told, if we want to do this, we will find a way to make it work. Even big businesses do this sometimes. B&H Photo on 9th Avenue in New York is the largest non-chain video and photo equipment store in the whole of the United States, the second largest in the world. There's a bigger one in Tokyo. On any given day, this is staggering, between 8,000 to 9,000 people pass through its doors. I know some people have been and they say it's an incredible sight. And yet 70% of their business is done online these days. And the owners, along with a lot of the employees, are Hasidic Jews, and so they don't conduct business on the Sabbath or on Jewish holidays. They close their doors at 1 PM on Fridays, and they keep them closed all day Saturday, the biggest shopping day of the week. And during Sabbath you can still look at their website, but you can't order anything. A customer once asked the B&H Photo Director of Communications how they could close on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving and the most busy shopping day of the year. And the director simply replied, "We respond to a higher authority." Those are people who take God's command seriously. And interestingly, in preparing for this, I've read 2 or 3 articles online from secular Jews who have gone back to the practice of Sabbath because they miss its benefits. I think we can take a good cue from them in that. Don't miss out on the blessing that God has for you here, the gift that he gives us, a free day every week. Frankly, I think if we don't take it, we're mugs. That's a theological term. For us, ourselves, we try and make Saturday our Sabbath, but we're flexible if we need to be. This week, what will we do? Well, anything we want is the honest answer to that. It's so liberating. It's a day to just switch off, and so I'm planning my Sabbath tomorrow. I'm going to do some photography. I'd like to listen to some cricket if England is still in the Test match. I want to, perhaps, if the weather's good, we might go out and have a picnic as a family. And I've got plans to eat with friends in the evening, albeit, bizarrely, over a Zoom connection. I think we'll have a great time. Those are things that are lined up that I'm looking forward to. And having the freedom to do that is really good. What won't we do? We won't do much housework. We'll try and keep those sorts of things to a minimum. The lawn isn't going to get mowed, even though it's well overdue one. Emails will just be ignored. I'm not even going to check them or look at them in any way. And we won't do a big shop. In fact, Becky's just going out in order to do some shopping this afternoon, so that we have that time where we don't need to do it. Again, we're not legalistic about that. If we need milk or a loaf of bread, we'll go and buy it on a Saturday or a Sunday, but we try to keep those things out of it so that we can guard the Sabbath. And some weeks we manage it better than others. So I just want to conclude by saying there are so many positives to doing this, and I would urge you to work hard at taking that day of rest. I think it's such a key thing for us in reducing our hurry, our stress, our anxiety, and acknowledging God in amongst everything else. As a result, I think of doing this, we are better rested, which has got to be good news in our busy, busy lives. We gain a better perspective. William Wilberforce in his diary once wrote, "Blessed be to God for the day of rest and religious occupation wherein earthly things assume their true size." And that's hopefully your experience as you do this as well. It also gives us freedom, time and permission to do whatever you like. Maybe somebody rings up and says, "Do you want to come for a barbecue?" You've got nothing in your diary. You can do that if you want to, rather than having to book 6 weeks in advance. It keeps work in its place. It becomes less of an idol, and we're trusting God with our work and all its problems and all the worries associated with that for 24 hours in a really practical way. Personally, I'm reminded that Jesus is head of his church, and he does a way better job than me at it. And there's also a wonderful sense of liberation knowing that I am doing nothing productive, and yet I am still so loved by the Father. Sabbath, as Walter Brueggemann says, is an act of resistance. It's a better way to live. Please make it part of your new normal. And whatever your pattern of Sabbath, however you spend it, whenever you have Sabbath, don't miss out on the gift that God gives you every week.